Hello and welcome to Johnny's Jazz Couch. Jazz. Today we're talking about cadences. We're going to talk about what is a cadence, why they're important, why they're not important, and many more things. So, let's go. A cadence is simply a transition between one chord and another. So in a classical way of thinking, like classical music, cadence is often the end of a phrase or the end of a piece. There's a sense of finality to a cadence. Whereas in the jazz world, a cadence will happen every bar, so a sense of finality loses its meaning. So in the jazz world, we call this a turnaround, the thing at the end of the phrase or the end of the piece, or simply the end of the chord progression, which denotes that we are going back to the top or to the start of the progression. So these cadences have names, although in the jazz world we never really use the names, but good to know them anyway. First cadence, called the perfect cadence, chord 5 going to chord 1. Second cadence, the plagal cadence, chord 4 to chord 1. Third cadence is the deceptive cadence, chord 5 going to any other chord than 1. Now you hear a chord 5 and you think it's going to chord 1, but then it doesn't because it's a trickster, hence deceptive cadence. So I alluded to these things being kind of useless because firstly, jazz people don't ever use these phrases, plagal cadence, blah blah blah. No, we just say the progression. It's a 4 to 1, no one cares for the name. So as you've seen from the definitions, a cadence is simply a transition between one chord and another. Maybe that's one bar and another, one key and another, one phrase and another. It's all about transitions, especially in the jazz world. So I've said the word jazz a lot and I feel the need to give a bit of definition, a bit of context here. So we have classical music and there is a theory, classical theory, which describes classical music. And then there is everything else. And jazz theory describes that everything else. So while I'm saying jazz theory this, jazz theory that, jazz theory describes everything from the complicated bebop right down to the very simple pop. I wanted to say that and make that distinction because theory can be a nightmare to people and jazz can be also very intimidating. So putting those things together into jazz theory can probably be a nightmare for some people, but it's really saying anything non-classical. And of course there is overlap between the two. Chord 5 going to chord 1 is probably the most common, most used and most important cadence that we have in non-classical, i.e. jazz. So you'll see this little sub-progression absolutely everywhere. So in our little journey here of the theory world, this is the start of what we call functional harmony, because this progression 5 to 1, especially 5 dominant 7 to 1, has a clear function. The dominant 7 serves as a signpost pointing back to our tonic, our key center, our home, which is the 1 chord. Dominant 7 chords and their roles is a super important topic, which is a topic all by itself, which will definitely warrant another video. But it's important we talk about these things because one of the most requested things by you was chord progressions. And we need to understand why these chords are the way they are before we can do progressions. We've already gone through how to build the chords, how they exist in different keys, and now we're starting to touch on functional harmony, which is what the chords actually mean, what they are doing. And this is all yet to come. So we are well on our journey to the end goal, which is what can I choose to improvise over? But we're going to take a slight deviation because I also want to show you how theory can be used to make your reading of music easier and make your life easier in general. Because if you don't want to solo, if you don't want to improvise, that's totally 100% fine. But you can also use all these tools to read better and easier, makes your sight reading better, and a working knowledge of theory will just make you see the music in a deeper perspective. So summing up, a bit of a rant, but we have our three main cadences: chord number 5, moving to chord number 1, chord number 4, moving to chord number 1, chord number 5, moving to anything it likes. So that was a quick one on cadences, and we'll see how to use these things and where they come up in the coming videos on chord progressions. Take care, have a good one, and keep chipping. Chum, chum, chum. Do you like the bass?